Let's be honest. Change sounds inspiring until you actually try to do it. It's easy to want to change, easy to dream of becoming better. But when you're standing in front of your own life with the same habits, the same thoughts, the same patterns, it suddenly feels impossible. Because deep down, most of us aren't fighting the world, we're fighting ourselves, and it's exhausting. Here's the truth most people won't tell you. It's not that you're lazy, it's not that you don't want it bad enough, it's that you're trying to become a new version of yourself while dragging around the weight of who you used to be. You can't transform if you're still clinging to the identity of someone who always quits. You can't move forward if you keep rehearsing the story of why it didn't work last time. Change requires grief. It requires letting go of the comfortable version of you, even if that version was holding you back. The first step isn't a strategy, it's a shift, a decision to stop saying, "This is just how I am," and start asking, "Who could I be if I gave myself the chance?" Stop looking for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for motivation to find you. Change begins the moment you act, in spite of not feeling ready. It begins the moment you choose progress over perfection. Because the truth is, waiting to feel like changing is a trap. You won't always feel like it. In fact, most of the time, you won't. But discipline doesn't care how you feel. Growth doesn't wait for your mood to improve. Real change happens in the quiet moments no one sees. When you get up 5 minutes earlier, when you go for that walk instead of scrolling, when you make a different decision, even though everything in you wants to go back to what's familiar, that's change, and it counts. You don't have to be perfect to begin. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to create enough movement that your momentum starts to drown out your excuses. The voice in your head that says, "You can't do this," isn't a prophecy, it's just a pattern. And every time you act in contradiction to that voice, you weaken its power. So what if today you just proved it wrong once? That's how it starts. One decision, one new habit, one moment of courage, and then another. You don't need a complete overhaul. You need a spark, a crack in the old pattern that lets the new version of you start to breathe. You are not stuck. You are just rehearsing old behaviors. And the moment you decide to disrupt them, no matter how small, you become powerful again. Change isn't impossible, it's inconvenient, it's uncomfortable. But so is staying the same. So choose your discomfort wisely, because one leads to your growth, the other to your regret. And you weren't built for regret. You were built to evolve. Now go prove it. We tend to believe that change starts with doing more. More hustle, more effort, more goals. But that's not where real change begins. Real transformation starts in the most invisible place, your identity. Not what you do, but what you believe about who you are. Because if deep down you're still telling yourself, "This is just the kind of person I am," you will always find a way to return to that script. It becomes your invisible thermostat. Try to rise above it, you'll sabotage. Try to create something better, you'll shrink back. Why? Because your identity hasn't caught up to your desire. You can try all the productivity hacks and morning routines in the world, but if you still see yourself as someone who always quits, someone who never follows through, someone who isn't that kind of person, you'll prove that identity true over and over again. It's not that the goal is impossible, it's that the belief system is outdated. So what needs to shift? You stop asking, "What do I need to do to change?" and start asking, "Who do I need to become?" You don't build a legacy by changing your schedule. You build it by changing your story, especially the one you're quietly telling yourself when no one's listening. This is the identity upgrade that no one talks about. The private conversation where you finally stop rehearsing your limitations and start reinforcing your potential. Where you decide, even if it feels awkward or fake at first, I am someone who finishes. I am someone who can. I am someone who is allowed to be powerful. That internal shift, that's the match that lights the fire. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you've just been loyal to a version of yourself that you've outgrown. And just like an outdated software system, that version might still run, but it crashes every time you try to expand. When people say change is hard, what they really mean is letting go of who I've been is scary. Because the old version of you may be limiting, but it's also familiar. It's safe, it's known. And growth demands the courage to step into the unknown and write a new identity in real time. So ask yourself, what if I stopped trying to be who I used to be and started becoming the person I need to be to live the life I want? Because that's the beginning, not a calendar. not a checklist, not a fresh start on Monday. It begins with belief, with declaring that your past is not your personality, that your history is not your destiny. The most powerful change is the one that happens quietly, internally, when you stop arguing for your limits and start claiming your future. And once you shift who you are, your actions won't need force. They'll just follow. Because when your identity changes, your life does too. We all wait for that perfect moment, the one where everything finally aligns, when we feel energized, focused, confident, ready. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That moment rarely comes. And when it does, it doesn't stay. Waiting to feel ready is one of the most convincing lies we tell ourselves. We say, I'll start when I have more time, or I'll go for it when I feel more confident. But what we're really doing is putting our dreams on pause, hoping that motivation will magically show up and drag us forward. And it won't, because motivation isn't a starting point, it's a side effect. It comes after action, not before. If you only move when it feels good, you'll move maybe 3 times a year. You'll have brief sparks of excitement followed by long stretches of hesitation. Because your feelings are inconsistent, they're reactive. And if you're waiting for them to give you permission, you'll stay exactly where you are. You don't need to feel confident to make a confident decision. You don't need to feel ready to begin. You just need to begin anyway. That's the game changer. The people who build incredible lives, who rewrite their stories, who actually follow through, they're not superhuman. They've just mastered the ability to move while feeling unsure, to take imperfect steps, to push through the fog, because they understand that clarity comes from doing, not overthinking. You don't become fearless and then take the leap. You take the leap and realize fear didn't own you like you thought it did. Think about it. How many times have you waited for motivation and watched days, weeks, or even months pass? You kept saying, I'll start tomorrow, and tomorrow kept moving. You're not lazy, you're just trained to believe you need the right feeling before you take the right step. But real growth happens when you act in opposition to what you feel. You feel tired, you show up anyway. You feel unsure, you try anyway. You feel unqualified, you speak anyway. That's the strength that builds a new reality. Not the fake social media kind of hustle where everything looks polished and powerful, but the gritty, behind-the-scenes version where you take messy, uncomfortable action that no one claps for, but changes you. Every time you move without waiting, you train your brain to trust you. You become someone who keeps promises to themselves. That's confidence, that's resilience. That's how momentum is built, not from waiting, but from showing up before it feels easy. So no, you don't need the perfect plan. You don't need to wait for the stars to align. You need one small move right now, not because you feel like it, but because you won't always feel like it, and your future doesn't have time to wait for your mood to change. Start now and let the motivation catch up to you. We're addicted to perfection. We think if it's not flawless, it's not worth doing. If we can't do it right, we won't do it at all. So we sit on ideas, we hold back our effort, we wait for the moment when we can get it exactly right, and guess what? That moment rarely comes. The pursuit of perfection is often the enemy of any progress at all. Because while you're obsessing over doing something the best way, someone else is out there doing it imperfectly, and they're getting better because they're actually doing it. If you've ever said, I want to change, but I'm not ready, what you probably mean is, I want to do this, but I'm scared of getting it wrong. But getting it wrong is part of the process. It's supposed to be messy. You're supposed to make mistakes. That's how real change looks behind the scenes. It's awkward, uncertain, uncomfortable, and it's also where growth happens. You don't become great by avoiding mistakes. You become great by learning through them. The most successful, most fulfilled people aren't the ones who started with the perfect plan. They're the ones who started, period. They didn't let the fear of imperfection freeze them. They showed up before they were ready. And they stayed consistent long enough for progress to compound. And here's what's crazy. Perfection was never the point. Growth is, think about the last time you made even a tiny change. You probably didn't do it perfectly, but you did it. And that's the win. That one small step created a ripple, a shift in your self-image. Suddenly, you weren't just thinking about change. You were living it. You see, perfection is a fantasy that keeps you stagnant. Progress is the real currency of change. Every time you show up, even if it's messy, even if it's clumsy, you're rewiring your identity. You're telling yourself, I am someone who takes action. And that belief becomes powerful, way more powerful than any perfect strategy you never implement. Because momentum doesn't come from big leaps. It comes from small wins stacked on top of each other. It comes from choosing to move, even if you're not sure where it will lead. That's not failure, that's training, that's resilience. That's how change becomes a habit instead of a dream. So don't wait until it looks good. Don't wait until you feel like an expert. Start where you are, start messy, start scared, but start. Forget perfect. Perfect is paralyzing. Progress is where your life changes. One imperfect step at a time. There's a voice in your head that has been with you for years. You know the one that whispers, you can't. The one that says, you've never followed through before, so why would this time be any different? That voice isn't your intuition. It's not wisdom. It's just a pattern. And like any pattern, it only has as much power as you keep giving it. We forget this. We treat that inner critic like it's telling the truth, like it's revealing some deep insight about our potential. But it's not. It's just replaying what's familiar, what's safe, what you've rehearsed for so long, it now sounds like fact. But just because a thought shows up doesn't mean you have to agree with it. You see, every time you've failed, every time you've backed down, every time you've said, maybe later, that voice has taken notes, and now it uses those moments as evidence. Evidence that this version of you is fixed, stuck, unchangeable. But that's not truth, that's just a loop. And here's the thing, every pattern can be disrupted, not by thinking differently, but by doing differently. The moment you act in opposition to that voice, when you show up, when you choose something better, when you say no to the habit and yes to the growth, you fracture the pattern. And every crack you make weakens its grip. It starts small. One different choice, one quiet rebellion against what you've always done, and then another and another, until suddenly that voice isn't as loud anymore, because you've drowned it out with action. And that's the key. You don't defeat your doubts by overthinking them. You defeat them by building new evidence. You tell a new story, not with words, but with behavior. You prove to yourself that you're not who you were a year ago, that you're not defined by your worst moments, that you're not limited to the script you've been following. You can edit, you can rewrite, you can step out of the loop. But it starts by doing the opposite of what that voice expects. If it says don't try, you try. If it says play it safe, you take a step forward. If it says you're not good enough, you act like someone who is. You don't need to argue with your fear, you just need to disobey it. Because confidence isn't born from feeling certain. It's born from choosing yourself over your limitations, over and over again. You build a new identity by making new moves. And over time, the voice in your head will catch up. It will start reflecting what you do, not what you fear. That's how you break the cycle. That's how you reclaim your power. You stop rehearsing the old script and start living a new one bold, defiant choice at a time. Let's be honest, change hurts, not always in the dramatic fall to your knees kind of way. Sometimes it's subtle. It's the quiet discomfort of doing something unfamiliar. It's the tension you feel when you're trying to break out of the old version of you and step into something better. And that's where most people quit. Because we've been sold the idea that growth is supposed to feel good, that if something's meant to be, it should be easy, natural, effortless. But real change, the kind that transforms your life, that kind of change is hard. It stretches you. It pulls you away from your comfort zone and dares you to keep going when everything in you wants to turn back. Here's the truth. Both staying the same and growing will hurt. You just have to choose which kind of pain you want. There's the pain of staying stuck. The pain of watching another year go by with the same regrets. The pain of knowing you didn't show up for your potential. It's subtle, but it builds slowly, quietly, until one day you wake up and wonder where all the time went. And then there's the pain of growth, the ache of consistency, the sting of failure, the discomfort of being misunderstood or underestimated while you evolve in silence. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because the pain of growth leads somewhere. It stretches you into a stronger version of yourself. It sharpens your mind. It strengthens your resilience. It shows you that you're capable of more than your excuses have allowed. Think about a muscle. It doesn't grow unless it's challenged. You can't build strength by staying comfortable. You build strength by leaning into resistance, by showing up when it's inconvenient, and by doing hard things over and over again. Discomfort isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're doing it right. That pit in your stomach before you have a difficult conversation. Growth. That early morning when you get up to train while your old self wants to sleep in? Growth. That moment you choose to walk away from something that no longer serves you, even though it's familiar? Growth. The life you want lives on the other side of discomfort. It's not being handed out to the people who have it easy. It's being earned by the people who are willing to feel uncomfortable long enough to evolve. So next time you feel the resistance, don't run from it. Recognize it. It's not a wall, it's a doorway. And every time you choose to walk through it, you're telling the world and yourself that your comfort zone doesn't define your ceiling. You're building something stronger, something real. And yes, it hurts, but nothing meaningful comes without sacrifice. Choose your pain, because only one of them leads to freedom. There's a version of you that no one has seen yet, a version that isn't defined by the mistakes you've made or the fear you've carried, a version that's not reacting to life, but leading it. And the truth is, unlocking that version of you doesn't require a miracle, it requires consistency. Consistency isn't sexy, it's not glamorous. No one claps for you when you show up to do the hard thing for the 50th time. No one applauds when you keep going after the initial excitement fades. But that's exactly where transformation happens. We often chase intensity, those big bursts of motivation that make us want to overhaul our lives overnight. We say, this is it, this is my moment, and maybe it is, but intensity fades. Emotions shift, and when they do, all you're left with is the question, will I still show up when the feeling is gone? Because anyone can act when they're inspired, but the people who change their lives are the ones who act without inspiration. They've made a quiet decision, no matter how I feel, I'm doing what I said I'd do. That's consistency. It's not dramatic, but it's powerful, and over time, it builds something that motivation alone never can. Identity. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even when it's inconvenient, you cast a vote for the person you're becoming. You say, I am the kind of person who follows through. I am the kind of person who shows up. And the more votes you cast, the stronger that identity becomes. You don't need to be extraordinary. You just need to be reliable with yourself. Most people never fail because they're not capable. They fail because they're inconsistent. They're brilliant for 3 days and absent for 30. They set the goal, but don't build the rhythm. They start with passion, but never develop discipline. But discipline is what builds the foundation. It's what carries you through the boring days, the hard days, the days when nothing seems to be working. And it's in those days that your future is decided. Success is built in the days when no one is watching, when there's no applause, no momentum, and no motivation, but you still choose to show up anyway. So if you're waiting for the right time to start, stop waiting. If you're waiting to feel motivated, stop waiting. Begin building the rhythm. Start stacking those small wins. Pick one promise and keep it, then keep it again tomorrow and the next day. Because every small act compounds, and over time you'll look up and realize you're not just showing up anymore, you've become someone new. And the best part, you didn't need to become someone different overnight. You just needed to keep showing up as someone willing to do the work, willing to stay the course. That's the kind of quiet power that builds a legacy. Not once, but daily, relentlessly, consistently,